Hello there, crafty friends. It's Joy here for ReverseConfetti. Today I'm going to share with you how I created this Emboss Resist Slimline card, and I'm using ReverseConfetti's A Beautiful Day stamp set. So here is that stamp set. I want to use all of these butterflies, and I have this in my MISTI. My card panel is measured 8 1/4 by 3 1/4, so it's slightly smaller than a slimline card. That is 8 1/2 by 3 1/2. But I want to have, when I put this panel on my card base, I want to have a nice little white frame around it because I will use a white card base. So I have the sentiment and all 3 of those butterflies adhered. I'm just starting from the top and I'm going to work down on this card panel. So I'm just making sure that my sentiment is nice and straight. I'm lining it up with the grid marks on my MISTI, and this sentiment says it's a beautiful day to go after your dreams, and it's what a cute and sweet sentiment. So now with Emboss Resist, you want to stamp your images and heat emboss them with either clear or colored ink or whatever. I'm using a white embossing powder, not ink. I meant a clear embossing powder. I'm using a white embossing powder. So I'm going to ink these up with a clear ink. I did prep my background with a powder tool because I don't want any little stray pieces of embossing powder at all. I'm going to sprinkle on the white embossing powder, which, you know, it's going to be hard to see on the white background, but I think that's part of the fun when you do the Emboss Resist technique, because then it comes to life when you add the color. So I have those images stamped. I'm going to heat that with my heat tool until it's nice and melted, and then I'm going to put this back into my MISTI so I can add a few more of those butterfly images. This is also great as far as a one-layer card goes. If you like to make one-layer cards, this is like really, really quick and easy to do. So I'm not going to use that big butterfly again. I just liked that that was on there one time and it's kind of by the sentiment, but I will use these other 2, and I'm just going to change the orientation. I want them to look like they're just flying over the whole background. I also want to leave open spaces. I don't need to fill it up and completely. If you wanted to do that, that would be really cute too. These are also open images, so you're going to see just the outlines of it. Doing this with like closed images or, you know, filled up images is also really stunning because those really stand out. So I'm going to sprinkle that embossing powder on my last 2 images and then get that heated up with my heat tool. Okay, so let's do some ink blending. I am using Simon Says Stamps Cheeky and Peachy for these first colors. So I'm starting at the bottom, and this is Peachy, and I'm going to work my way up. I want it to be a little bit darker at the bottom. I'm going to work my way up to the sentiment where it's a little bit lighter. Then from the top down, I am going to use Cheeky ink from Simon Says Stamp. And I'm going to let that get a little bit lighter where the sentiment meets. Now, I wanted to leave some open spaces and not fill it up with a ton of images because I want to bring in a stencil to add another layer of interest to this background. So after I get this ink blended, I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. But aren't these 2 colors just gorgeous? And I love that they meet at the sentiment, and that the sentiment is, you know, not directly in the middle of the card. Okay, so I'm using a stencil from my stash, and I'm just going to do tone on tone ink blending. So the same, or stenciling, excuse me, the same ink that I used for the background, I'm going to use for the stenciling. The areas that it's darker, I'm going to stencil darker, and the areas that are lighter, I'm going to stencil lighter. Something else I decided when I was picking a stencil is that I wanted really small images so it looks like this really pretty patterned background, and you can actually understand what's going on with the images from the stencil. So I'm going to finish up there at the bottom, and then I decided to get one more color of like darker ink. So this is Grapefruit, and I'm going to ink blend to the bottom of that a little bit darker, and then the top will be Blush, and I just felt like that added a much more interest to the background of this card. Once you're done ink blending, take a dry rag or paper towel and just gently buff the ink off of your embossed images. And look at how beautiful these butterflies are. They're such gorgeous images, and then when they get revealed by that ink blending, I love how that turned out. I added this to a slimline card base, which measures 8.5 by 3.5, and I just decided to use some white sequins. I didn't want to change up the color palette, and I think it turned out absolutely stunning. So I'm going to finish adding those with a little bit of liquid glue. I just did a scattering of them over the whole card. And then look at how darling this is, and those butterfly images just pop off the background. Thank you guys so very much for stopping by and watching. I hope that you feel inspired, and I'll be back soon with another video. Bye!